Welcome to the Chapter 1 lecture on the Internet and the World Wide Web. This lecture does not cover everything in Chapter 1, but was created as a supplement to your readings. After reading Chapter 1, you should be able to meet the learning objectives of the chapter. Those objectives include describe the evolution of the Internet and the web, explain the need for web standards, describe universal design, identify benefits of accessible web design, identify reliable resources of information on the web, identify ethical use of the web, describe the purpose of web browsers and web servers, identify networking protocols, define URIs and domain names, describe HTML, XHTML, and HTML5, and lastly, describe popular trends in the use of the web. Intranets and extranets, how are they different from the Internet? While the Internet is an interconnected network of computer networks that is globally available, an intranet is a private network contained within an organization or business to share information and resources with the employees. Intranets can help users, such as employees, locate information about the company that only employees can access. This might be information on the hiring process, payroll, or perhaps even a company picnic. An extranet, on the other hand, is similar to the intranet, but as external partners such as suppliers, vendors, and customers have controlled access to company information. This would be valuable if a supplier needed to check on the inventory to make sure that the company always had the right number of parts on hand. So who makes up the web standards? While no single person or group runs the World Wide Web, the World Wide Web Consortium, referred to as the W3C, takes a proactive role in developing recommendations. The W3C recommendations are created in working groups with input from many major corporations involved in building web technologies. According to the W3.org Consortium member list as of July 8, 2019, the W3C has 444 members. Companies such as Adobe, Microsoft, Apple, and AT&T are just a few of these members. Unfortunately, in the past, major software companies that build web browsers, such as Firefox, Chrome, and Internet Explorer, followed their own rules. The result is that websites don't always display exactly the same in all browsers. Fortunately, there is a convergence toward the W3C recommendations in new versions of all major browsers, and following the W3C recommendations is the first step towards creating an accessible website. For those of you that are interested, here is the website W3.org Consortium member list, and you can see all of the current members. They're all alphabetical, so if you're interested in reviewing this, you might want to take a look. But you can see here is Adobe, and we have Amazon and Apple, AT&T, and I'm just pointing these out because they're some of the bigger companies that come to mind, Bank of America, Barclays Bank, etc. So if you want to check it out, feel free to go to this website and do a little bit of research as to who actually makes up this W3C. Web accessibility. Since the web has become an integral part of daily life, it is important that all individuals are able to access it. An accessible website is one that provides accommodations to users with visual, auditory, physical, and neurological disabilities. The Web Accessibility Initiative, or the WAI, has developed recommendations to facilitate use of the web for those users with special needs. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or the WCAG, are developed by the W3C and provide techniques for making websites accessible to users with special needs. We do our best to make the lectures for this course meet the needs of individuals with special needs by providing the lectures with voice recordings and transcripts. There are legal rulings addressing the creation of accessible websites. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities and applies to Internet resources. Section 508 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act requires developers creating information technology for use by the federal government to provide for accessibility. State governments also promote and encourage web accessibility. The reality is that creating accessible websites is easy, and if it is easy for us to do, why wouldn't we want to make our websites accessible? It is just the right thing to do. Universal design can be described as the design of products and environments to be usable by all people, to the greatest extent possible, without the need for adaptation or specialized design. An example of universal design could be the cutouts on curbs that make it possible for people in wheelchairs to access the street, but also benefit people pushing strollers or pulling luggage. Accessible websites that are more easily used by visitors with disabilities might also be more easily used by visitors that are perhaps using a mobile device device where the lighting is not great. Universal design is just plain good design. It is important that you have a little bit of knowledge about networks. A network is simply two or more computers connected together for the purpose of sharing resources. The network includes a server, client workstation computers, shared devices such as printers, and networking devices such as a router and switch, and the media that connects them such as copper cables, fiber optic cables, or wireless technologies. The clients are the computer workstations used by individuals such as yourself. The server receives requests from the client for resources such as files. Networking devices such as hubs and switches provide network connections for computers, and routers direct information from one network to another. The client-server model refers to personal computers joined by a network. The client requests some type of service, such as a file, from the server, and the server fulfills the request and transmits the file to the client over a network. When you create web pages, you need to store them on a server somewhere, and you might have an account with a company such as GoDaddy. Some large companies have their own servers, such as ASU. Here's a simple graphic that shows the user's personal computer as the client. The user sends a request through the browser by typing a URL in the browser's address bar. The request is sent to the web server where the files are stored. When the file is located, it is sent back to the client. This is a very simple explanation of the client-server model. Internet protocols are rules that describe how the clients and servers communicate with each other over a network. There is no single protocol that makes the internet and web work. There, however, are a number of protocols with specific functions. These include file transfer protocols, FTP, email protocols, hypertext transfer protocols, HTTP, and transmission control protocols / internet protocols, referred to as TCP/IP. File Transfer Protocol, also referred to as FTP, is used to move files from one location to another. It is frequently used for uploading files to a web server when launching a website. In this course, you will be taught how to upload files one at a time to the web server. If you prefer to upload all the files at once and are a little more computer savvy, you can use FTP to upload your files. HTTP, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is used by web browsers and servers. When the user of a web browser requests a file by typing a website address or clicking on a hyperlink, the browser builds an HTTP request and sends it to the server. The web server in the destination machine receives the request, does any necessary processing, and responds with the requested file and any associated media files. IP, or Internet Protocol, is a set of rules that controls how data is sent between computers on the Internet. IP routes a packet to the correct destination address. Once sent, the packet gets forwarded to the next closest router until it reaches its destination. Each device that is connected to the Internet has a unique numeric IP address. These addresses consist of a set of 4 groups of numbers called octets. For example, 216.58.194.46 is an IP address of Google. If you type this IP address into the address bar of your computer, you will pull up the Google landing page. An IP address may correspond to a domain name such as google.com. It is much easier to remember google.com than the 10-digit IP address. The domain name system, also referred to as DNS, was introduced as a way to associate text-based names with numeric IP addresses. It can be hard to remember the IP address of a site you may want to visit, such as Google. However, remembering the domain name google.com is fairly easy. A URI, or Uniform Resource Identifier, identifies a resource on the Internet. A URL, or Uniform Resource Locator, is a type of URI which represents the network location of a resource. From this image, you can see that the HTTP denotes the use of the HTTP protocol, and the web server named www at the domain name of webdevfoundations.net. The root file, usually index.html, of the Chapter 1 directory will be displayed. Markup languages consist of a set of directions that tell the browser software how to display and manage a web document. Markup languages consist of SGML, HTML, XML, XHTML, and HTML5, the newest version of HTML. SGML is a standard for specifying a markup language or tag set. HTML is the set of markup symbols or codes placed in a file intended for display on a web browser. We will be working with HTML5 in this class. XML was developed by the W3C as a flexible method to create common information formats and share the format and the information on the web. XML was not intended to replace HTML, but rather to extend the power of HTML by separating data from presentation. Next came XHTML, which was developed by the W3C as the reformulation of HTML 4.0 as an application of XML. It combines the formatting strengths of HTML 4.0 and the data structure of XML. And finally, we have HTML5, which is what we are working on in this class. And it appears that the W3C is adding updates for 5.1 and 5.2. And that concludes the lecture on Chapter 1. As a reminder, this lecture just covered some of the highlights from the textbook. Please be sure to read the entire chapter.